Purge, to remove impurities by or as if by cleansing. Job 23:10. But he knoweth the way that I take. When he hath tried me, I shall come forth as gold. Hey everybody, welcome back once again. It's your girl Jasmine. So today we are going to be talking about purging. Now basically I had done a challenge video a while ago talking about letting go and letting God and getting rid of the things in our life that we've held on to from our past, things we've held on to, such as like pictures that remind us of our past, certain items that God wants us to let go of so that we can move on to where it is that he needs to for us to go. But through the purging process, there is a testing process in which we have to go through as well, trying to, if God is trying to purge our lives, our personal lives, from the things in which he wants to remove from us. And when I do think about purging, I think about eating disorders. When I was younger, I did suffer I used to have an eating disorder. I used to make myself purge, of course. So basically, it's removing those things in which you don't think is really needed. But of course, food is needing. But what God is doing is removing those things out of our lives in which he thinks is not needed. So whatever struggles that you have within you, he may have you, like I said, get rid of some things that you hold on to that he wants you to let go of. I remember when I actually first started my journey on following Christ, I remember going to the altar and I heard God whisper in my ear. It just seemed so loud. I heard God's voice say, there's two things that you need to let go of, that you've been holding on to since you've been at school and you just won't let go of. And when I first heard God say let go of those things, I was like, oh my gosh, God, how am I going to let go of these things? But God will help you along the way. But we're going to be talking about the fiery furnace. So we're going to be in Daniel chapter 3, verses 14 through 26. So I encourage you guys to read those, and then we will carry on. All right, stay tuned for the lesson. God bless. All right, you guys. So we are going to basically be talking about purging. So when we look in the Bible in Daniel 3, what is actually happening here is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are standing up against Nebuchadnezzar, King Nebuchadnezzar, because he built this golden image, and they were not going to bow down to the things in which was going on. They weren't going to bow down to the golden image. Basically, every time there was a bell rang, they would have to bow down to the image. Now, this represents the world. When you think about ringing a bell, we think of like Pavlov, and basically what happened with Pavlov is he did this experiment where he was trying to condition like the animal, and basically he would ring a bell and the dog would start salivating, and because he knew that the food was coming, to a point where every time they rang the bell he thought the food was coming. So at one point they stopped bringing the food and they rung the bell, and the dog would still salivate because it was used to the bell. So basically that's what happens in our life, is we get so used to the bells of life when it comes to sin, that every time the bell rings it just conditions us to sinning. So here you have this golden image that Nebuchadnezzar wants you to bow down to. And, God, when he purges us, he wants us to come out forth pure as gold. He wants us to come out looking like him. Now, if we're bowing down to that image, basically we're not looking like God. We're looking like whatever sin it is that you're bowing down to in the world. You're bowing down to whatever it is of the things that are not of God. And what God is trying to do is to purge those things out of us in which should not be there. So when you look in, basically what happens is, Nebuchadnezzar thought he was like bad, and he told Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, he says, and who is in chapter in verse 15 at the end it says, and who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hand? So he thinking, your God is nothing. Your God, who's gonna deliver? I'm the king, I'm the bomb. And that's kind of how like Satan is, the world is, the world thinks, you're so stuck in your sin. Even, people that you hang out with, they'll probably be like, yeah, whatever. She's never gonna get out of, or he's never gonna get out of his sin. Whatever. Who's gonna do? Whatever. I don't know what kind of situation that you're in, but sometimes it's just like, you become like this person that everybody runs over. They know that you're so wrapped up in your sin. They know they could just walk all over you, and it's just like, they're like, whatever. Who's gonna deliver you out of my hands? Like I'm ruling over them. And that's kind of how Satan is in the world. Like he's just like, whatever. Nobody's gonna like allow you to get out. You're so stuck in your sin. People around Satan will have people say to you, "Oh, you're so stuck in your sin. You're never gonna get out of that sin. You're never, whatever." But God, He wants to purge us, But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they knew God. They knew God. And it says in verse 16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter." See, they feared God. They feared the Lord. They knew what God could do to them. And it says, "If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image in which thou hast set up." So basically, here they are, and this is like faith. Like, you can see their faith written all of them. They were just like, look, I'm going to serve God. I know he's going to deliver me out of this fire. And, if you're going to throw me in the fire, whatever. Throw me in the fire. He can deliver me. But if he does not, I'm still going to serve him. I'm still, like, they had so much fear in God, because regardless, if God never brought them out of the fire, to help them, purge certain things out of them, if God never, it didn't matter, because they were still going to serve God. They weren't going to bow down to the things of the world. And what happens is, so often, is that we end up bowing down instead of standing up for the things in which is right unto God. Recently, there had been this whole Chick-fil-A thing, and we think about it. That's a fire right there that they're walking through. That's a fire that the Christians are walking through. And basically, it's just like, if God, if say his company goes down and and gets burnt in the fire, this is kind of like the fiery furnace, but it's just like he's still gonna serve God. Why? Because God is real. You feel what I'm saying? It's not like he's not real. God is a real God. And there's no ifs, ands, or but. And sometimes we have to go through the fire. But the fire, like, it purges us, it teaches us things, it takes things out of us, in which, and it shows us, what kind of things that we, how much heat we can resist when we're standing with God, when we're doing the things that God wants us to do. So I'm going to put up the first few questions, and then we're going to carry on. All right, you guys? Peace. What are some things in which you have been conditioned to in your life? What are some things in which you have been bowing down to, in which you don't want to any longer, so that you can look more like Christ? Alright, you guys, so we're going to continue on. So it says in verse 19, "And then Nebuchadnezzar, full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 17 times more than it was wont to be heated. And he commanded the most mighty men that were in the army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the fiery furnace." So pay attention, he said bind them. Okay? And then these men were bound in their coats and their hosen and their hats and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king commandments were urgent, and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire slew those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound into the midst of the fire furnace. All right, we're going to stop there in verse 23. So basically what we're seeing right here is they were, basically what happened is the men were instructed to start the fire, because They did not bow down to the image. Like as we see in the world, whenever we as people don't bow down to the image of what society says is wrong, basically what happens is that the world will start building up a fire to make it really hot so that we will not get out of the fire. It looks like we will not get through this. There'll be a storm, a ruckus, because they don't believe in the things in which, see, Nebuchadnezzar didn't believe, that there was a God that was going to save them. He didn't believe that God would protect them from what it was that he was trying to do, because he wanted them to bow down to his image. He wanted them to accept those things in which were not right here with him. They weren't going to bow down because that was not God. That was not of God. And so basically what happens is here, God is trying to purge. You'll see that the men who went in, they were bound. See, what society will do is society will try to put you in a bind you up, lock you down. You may not be locked down within sin, but you may be locked down with the things of the world. They'll choke you up so that you won't be able to push forward into where it is that you need to be going in life. So they were bound down. They were, they had a whole bunch of stuff on. They had coats and hosens and hats and other garments. When they had so much stuff, it's like when the world puts so much heat on you, you get bound down. But this fire that, they're going through is going to, purge certain things out of them. One, specific person that I really think of when I think about going through, a fiery time is there's two people, Job and Joseph. We think about Joseph and how he was with his brothers, and they sold him into slavery. But Joseph lived this holy life unto God, and he was chosen to do the things in which God had called him to do. And his brothers became jealous, and he went through his own fires in life. He went through his own things in which helped him to purge some of the things out of his life. When you think about Joseph, he went through the slavery, and then he went through the jail. But one thing that we can really say about Joseph is Joseph needed to be purged from wanting to feel that he needed to be accepted in society, because being a Christian, there's a lot of time that we don't have time to feel the need of being accepted into society. We are a peculiar people. We are set apart from the world, so there is no time to be feeling like we need to be accepted. Because when you think about Joseph had the opportunity to turn around when Jacob sent him to Shechem to check on his brothers, and his brothers weren't there. The man asked him, "What seekest thou?" And Joseph says he was seeking for his brothers. But in all actuality, if you had siblings, all your siblings, and they did not accept you at all because the life in which God had chose for you, then you would feel the same way. You would want them to but he just kept seeking on. He wanted that acceptance. When you look at his brothers, I'm actually turned to it in Genesis. When you look at his brothers, basically they wanted to kill him, and you can find that in Genesis 37, but you would think about it, they're shepherds. They have a job, they shepherds, and they're watching over the flock. And you would think that some people in life and society, they would be happy with the jobs in which God, the task in which God had given them. No, but they wanted more. They wanted more of what Joseph was having. They weren't just content. So maybe, through this experience, we don't know what God was doing to them in their life. Sometimes, in the midst, God is working on one set of one person and working on the other person on the other side, and we don't see what's happening until the end result. See, they probably were, had to learn how to be content in the things in which God had called them to be, because, there's some people in this world, they want more, but everybody has a place in God. Everybody has a, place in the body of Christ, just because, someone may be like a finger or someone like, maybe an arm doesn't mean that you don't have a place in the kingdom. Everybody has a purpose in Christ. God has a purpose for everybody. If you did not have a purpose, you would not be here. There would be no reason for you to be here, but God created everyone to have a purpose. That's why you are here as a person. So, we never know what, at the end, basically, Joseph ends up saying to his brother, you meant it for bad, but God meant it for good. Why? He realized, after, standing out of the crowd when he was in slavery, and then he stood apart, and he ran away from a woman who was trying to be lustful, sinful with him. You would think that, okay, I'm just going to fall into the sin and I'm just going to do whatever I want to. No, Joseph stood up for what was right, because he was set apart. He knew, that was his fiery furnace in which he had to go through. Like, even though he was enslaved and bound down by the world, but God was still making him into the man and molding him into the person that he needed to be. So during that process, through everything that we go through, God takes a little out of us in which in which which has bound us. We look right here. It's, when it's a fiery furnace, it says, they were bound with their coats. You think about, just being bound with coats. You have so much stuff that they were bound with, their coats and the hosens and the hats and the other garments. Just think about all the things in which in your life you're bound down with in your life. And, though you're going through the furnace, God is trying to, take off all of that in which you're bound down with, and though you're in the fire, it doesn't mean that you're walking through the fire alone. It doesn't mean that, it's going to last long. And we're going to see that as we continue on, but we need to be purged through this process. So I'm going to put up the next few questions and then we are going to carry on. All right, you guys. Define bind. What things have you been bound to in your life? During the fires in your life, did they help you lose some of those issues? All right, you guys. So here we are in verse 24. It says, Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished and rose up in haste and spake and said unto his counselors, Did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? And they answered and said unto the king, True, O king. He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. Now that's crazy because we are in the Old Testament, and it looked like the 4th man was like the Son of God. So then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the fiery furnace and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, ye servants of the Most High God, come forth and come hither. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth in the midst of the fire. So here we are, and basically, like I said, we are gonna go through fires in our lives. When we look at in the Bible, we look at the man named Job, and Job was being purged of some things out of his life. He was faithful unto God, and we could be faithful servants unto God, and God still need to purge us from the things in out of our lives. We could be in our Bibles, reading our words constantly, doing the things in which God has called us to do. But there are things in our lives, like I said in the beginning, when I first started, when God called me to leave, school, there were things in which, I'm faithful. Like, I do my lessons. I read my Bible constantly. I'm praying constantly. I'm trying to, keep up with my relationship with God. I'm constantly trying to go to church, not, leave the church, even when I go through, situations and things throughout my life. I'm trying to remain faithful unto God, but that doesn't mean just because, you're faithful unto God, but you still don't need things to be purged out of your life. You still, there's people who are hoarders, who hoard things in their life. And, like, you would think about, maybe you're like a hoarder within your own body. You just like, you basically, like, since you were younger, you've been collecting all this information in your life. Some of the information may be wrong. It's not things of God, and God is trying to remove them out of your life. And so, we think about like people like Job. I mean, Job, his wife, literally after God, like, he removed like, Job lost everything, in a matter of a day. And basically his wife was like, curse God and die. And Job wanted to be faithful to God. Like, like, you just think about situations like losing everything, or like, like when I think about like how I went to go follow Jesus, and then how I look at people and how they look at my life right now. Like, if I didn't know, or have a relationship with God, and like have the vision of where he's taking me, if I was to be an outsider looking in, I'd be like, girl, what is going on with your life? Like, but, you gotta trust God, but God still has to like purge the things out of you. I've had to go through a purging process myself. I threw away a lot of old things out of my life. I got to a point where literally God had to take a whole bunch of stuff out of me and then like pour new seeds into me, because he has to get those new things out, those old things out of your life. You can't go around your whole life, if somebody taught you that 2 + 2 was 5, and then wake up one morning and someone goes, no baby, look, it's 4, because and you'll be walking around like, no, what do you mean it's 5? Like, God has to purge you and take certain things out of your life. So, in which that don't belong. So basically what happens here is, Nebuchadnezzar sees that even though they're going through the fire. See, this is what we need to understand. Like, when we are going through the fire, we cannot let people see us sweat, because we are walking this walk with God. What I really had to learn, because someone, like, because people kept coming up to me for a while and being like, Jazz, like, and what are you doing? And I used to get like offended like about it, but you got to realize, like, if you're walking through your walk with God and you're standing up for the right things in which God has told you to do, you should not be sweating it. Here they are in the midst of a fire, and the people who threw them into the fire, because they weren't walking with God, because they weren't walking with the things of God, the people who aren't doing the things in which God has called them to do, or standing up for the things of God, of course they're going to get burned as soon as the fire comes. Like, here, it says that basically when they opened up the door, the people who were at the door burnt up. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they didn't even sweat it. They just, they were in the fire. And when you're walking through the fire, you can't even think about those things and stress about those things in which, the world stresses about. Here is the world stresses about certain things in life. You got to be thinking, maybe your fire in life is, you're having a hard time, paying your bills, you just lost your job and all that stuff, but you trust God. You feel what I'm saying? And God told you that he's going to provide. Trust God to provide. Why? He'll make a way. Why? Because he's God. Don't, be like, oh my gosh, woe is me, all this stuff. Those are the things in which the world stresses about. Those are the things in the world that the world would bow down their head and just be like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? No, you serve a God, you trust God, and you believe God said he's going to do what he said he's going to do. Well, then, that's in his hands. He is in control of the situation. Don't stress it out. Like, those are the things, and the world stresses about those things, but we, like we said, like I said earlier, we are peculiar people. We are not of this world. This is not our home. This is a temporary place. That's why Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego was like, like I said before, they say, in verse 17, if be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us out of the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, it doesn't matter. Why? Because in the end of the day, like, if God never delivered, like, out of the fire in which, that you're in, it doesn't matter, because this is not a temporary place. This is not a place in which you'll always be. Like, heaven is our home. When all this fades away, it's just going to be like heaven or hell. That is it. Heaven or hell. That is it. It's either you're going to heaven or you're going to hell. But they knew, regardless point blank period. I'm still gonna be walking with God if I go through the fiery furnace, and if I and if I get burnt in the fire, and if I get killed in the fire, and all that stuff, I'm gonna go to heaven, and I'm still gonna be walking with God. So regardless, I'm still gonna be walking with God. There was this story that I hear preached all the time, and I love it. It's about this woman, and her husband got mad because she was going to church and held a gun to her, and he said, "You better not be going to church." And she said, "Well, you know what? It's either you let me go to church and I'm going to be with God, or you kill me, but I'm still going to be with God." So point blank period, this is how we need to be. The fire furnace, okay, well, whatever, because God is faithful. Okay, things, regardless, they got delivered from the fiery furnace. Why? Because they didn't sweat it. Because they knew their God was faithful and that God was going to do what he said he was going to do. Point blank period. That is all. So we need to allow God in the midst of the fire, but it says that they came out loose. So basically, in the midst of the fire, whatever the things that you're struggling with while you're going through the fire, God is still going to purge you from those things, and when you come out on the other side, you're going to be loose from those things in which we're bounding. So it's just like, kind of like, even though Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego weren't bowing down to the gods in which, and the golden image in which Nebuchadnezzar wanted them, they were still bound down from some things. But the things that they were bound down were from the things of society. But when they came out loose. They came out not heavy. They didn't have those things that they once had. So though the world may put the fire on you, there may be some things in which God wants to purge out of you in the process and get rid of in the process. So while you're going through that, he'll help get rid of those things, because I'm a witness to this. Like, I've been going through like this purging process throughout my season. And so I've had to throw away tons of stuff, and there's been so much stuff in my life in which God has literally been like, choop, like, bye, Jazz. You cannot have that in you anymore. Like, it is time to move forward. And I did a lesson on moving forward. If you are in the process of moving forward in your life, you cannot move forward if you're still holding on to things that are back there. It is not possible. I'm going to turn to Philippians. In Philippians, hold on. Let me turn there. Okay, Ephesians. Okay, Philippians 3:13. It says, "Brethren, I count not myself to be apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things in which are behind, and reaching forth unto those things which are before. I press towards the mark of the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. Let us therefore, as many as be perfect, be thus minded, and if in anything ye be otherwise minded, God shall reveal even this unto you." Okay, so basically what we need to do is we need to keep pressing forward into the things of God. Keep going forward into the things of God. Allowing God to take those things out of us and purge those things out of us so we can press forward into God. But if we don't let God purge the things out of us that we need to get rid of, we will be stuck in the same place. You cannot be stuck in the same way. You need to get things purged out of your life. It is very important to move forward. So many people cannot move on to the future and will literally be stuck going in the same place. When I think about this, I think about the children of Israel. It's like they did not let God purge the things out of them in which he needed to purge out of them. Like, they went from Egypt and to go into the promised land, and it's like, okay, well, God, I don't know. And I'm telling you, they walked in the wilderness for 40 years. 40 years because of their doubt, because they were holding on to the things in which were back there, and they wouldn't let God purge it out of them. So basically their children were allowed to go into the promised land, because why? because they wouldn't get those things and let those things go. So we need to let those things go in our life, because if not, there's things that God could want to do in our lives, but he can't do them because you won't let go of certain things. So I encourage you guys to let go of certain things in your life. I encourage you guys to watch that lesson, the challenge video on letting go and letting God, challenge video. And I just encourage you to let God purge the things out of you. You're going to come forth as gold. You're going to be reflected as Christ. You're going to be more Christ-like. Yes, it may be hot. Yes, you may be going through flames. Yes, you may be going through tests and trials, but it doesn't matter. Why? Because God is walking through you, walking with you. So you have to remember that, the world, they go through their tests, their trials and everything, but they don't walk with God. You have a God to walk with you. So as long as you're walking with God, that he's going to get you through it. I'm a testimony. I'll tell you, following Jesus through this whole process of me following Christ, it has not always been easy. But one thing that I do know is I know that as long as I'm with Christ, I can make it through it. I've been through way too much, just to give up and turn around now. I want the things in which God has for me. So I just encourage you guys to let God purge you in your life and continue to stay blessed. All right, you guys. God bless you. Peace. Do you find it easier to walk through the fire before you found Christ or after? What are issues in which you stress over like the world does, knowing Jesus is walking with you? All right, everybody. Well, thanks again for tuning in. Until we meet again. All right, you guys. God bless.